This is Jeff Harding. I'll be your host today, and I'm sitting in for Kyle Case, who's out of town. Joining me today is Derek Campbell.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you? Or
Doing
should I
great.
say joining me again?
Yes.
Well, Derek, here we are. Another day.
Yeah,
Another
it's a
fine
beautiful
day.
Thursday. Kind of a little warm out there. Temperatures are rising.
Yeah, it is. Derek, you know, the last couple of weeks you've been sitting in with me, and we've heard people mention warming up.
Yeah.
Warming up before you exercise, warming up before you compete. Well, I was wondering what they meant by warming up. So I did a little research, and I just thought I'd share with you and the listening audience what the experts say.
All right.
Is warming up.
I feel like I'm warming up. So
Yeah, you are. You're warming up. You're doing great. And this is from the from the website About Health, and this is information that was provided by Elizabeth Quinn, who, by her own title, says that she's a health expert. So
okay.
I don't know her personally, but we'll just take her.
Well, I
word
hope
for
she
it.
has good info.
Yes. First of all, it says that you should gradually increase the intensity of your sport-specific movements.
Okay.
So, like, if you're playing, that's why when you're warming up for a baseball or softball game, you stand a short distance apart and throw the ball back and forth to each other, gradually getting farther away.
That makes sense.
It allows the muscles to warm up, gets the blood pumping, gets the oxygen to the muscles. Or if you're a runner, you might jog a little bit and then start doing some sprints before you go to your full workout.
Okay.
And then she also suggests adding movement not related to your sport or activity. So, say softball. We know that softball players don't run except on very rare occasions. So you might add a little jogging and running into your throwing movement or something like that. So, next, it's time to stretch the muscles just a little bit. Not the major stretch, but just a little bit, like some light calisthenics or some toe touches or something like that. But just stretch your muscles out a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the last thing she suggests is that you should keep in mind that the perfect warm-up is very individual and that you need to figure out what works best for you, what gets you warm. So experiment.
Okay.
Try different things. And that's how you're going to get your best warm-up before an activity.
I was told before I ever go running or jogging that I'm supposed to warm up, and that stretching wasn't the answer. So I was told to walk before I run. So
Which would fall in line with what she's saying.
Yeah.
You walk a little bit, that gets the muscles moving, gets the blood circulating, and then when you're ready to start running, you start running.
it makes sense. Definitely, you feel the difference too.
Yes,
when
you
you get
do.
a good warm up.
Yes, you do. Well, that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today, but I just thought it would be interesting to...
Things are warming up.
Well,
so.
they are. Well, I guess in a roundabout way it does, because we're going to talk to another one of our wonderful athletes today. We're going to be talking with Donald Graham, and he's a swimmer, and he's been with us about 5 years overall. Donald, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome to the show, Donald.
Well, thank you.
Good to have you here. So, Donald, we know a little bit about you, but our listening audience doesn't. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background to tell us who you are, where you grew up, just some basic stuff like that.
Well, I'm a photographer working in the fashion, movie, and music industries, and grew up in Seattle, but I live in Los Angeles now. And I began... in high school and college, I was a competitive swimmer and went to the University of Texas on an athletic scholarship. And when I graduated, I went into my career and didn't train anymore for quite a while. And then in 1998, at the age of about 45, I started training again for swimming. And I've been training now for 17 years. And I train 6 days a week, about an hour and a half a day.
Wow. Now, do you warm up properly? How would you warm up for swimming? You heard the little intro about warming up. How do you warm up as a swimmer? What are some of the routines you go through to get yourself ready to actually do a workout?
We start by movements that are swimming movements on dry land, and we do some stretching at the beginning, and then probably for about 5 to 10 minutes of stretching, particularly the shoulder and the legs. And then water, the first things that we do are easy, slow swimming until the joints and the muscles start up. And that probably spend about 20 minutes warming up before you start any kind of hard or fast swimming.
Well, it's good to know that the advice we got is being followed by swimmers out there, because that's exactly what she told us to do in the beginning. So, how did you become interested in swimming back in the very beginning? What was it that drew you to the water besides being raised in an area near the ocean?
Well, I grew up in a community that had a community pool, and when I was 8, 9 years old during the summertime, they would hold competitions, and I competed in a number of those when I was 8, 9, 10. And by the time I was about 11, I noticed that some of the kids whom I'd been beating the year before were all of a sudden much faster and much better, and it was because they were training year-round. And so at the age of 12, I made a decision that I wanted to train year-round for swimming, and so I joined a club program so that I could train year-round for swimming. And I did that from age of 12 until I was graduated from college.
So you knew at an early age that you enjoyed the competitive nature of the sport and that you wanted to be competitive in the sport.
That's correct.
Wow. I mean, a lot of kids at that age are more content to watch, at least back when we were that age, more content to watch TV or nowadays play video games rather than go out and compete. But you knew that you wanted to compete, so that's pretty amazing. And then you continued it on through high school? How successful were you?
I continued it through high school, and I received an athletic scholarship and went to the University of Texas, and so I continued it through college until I graduated.
Did you have a lot of success? Did you win a lot of races?
Well, Texas is one of the best programs in the United States. They just won the NCAA championship this year, and they've consistently been a top team. So I guess the long answer is yes, or the short answer is yes. I was successful. I mean, there's always degrees of success. Wherever you're at, there's always a level above where you're at, where you're seeking to go. So I think asking an athlete if they're successful, that becomes a more complicated answer oftentimes.
Well, that's very true.
Donald, this is Derek. I've got a question for you. You said you're training 6 days a week now. So what does that mean for you in your life? Obviously, you're coming to the Huntsman World Senior Games and you're competing here. How have you done competitively there in these tournaments, as well as, how are you doing at other tournaments that you go to? I'm just kind of curious where you are at, in your senior age and training so frequently.
Well, I'm now 60 years old, and I'm the current world record holder in the 50-meter butterfly.
Wow.
At the Huntsman Games, I hold, I believe, 10 Huntsman Games records. When I've competed, I can't remember, but I think I've won every race that I've competed in. I could be wrong on one or two, but generally every race. And I think there's about I have to check, but I think it's about 9 races per each competition, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So by most standards, that's pretty successful. And the part that makes me feel particularly proud is that the time that I did last October, when I broke the world record in 50-meter butterfly, was the same time that I was doing when I was in college at 21 years old.
Wow.
That's impressive.
To be able to compete at the same level as you did when you were 21 and now you're 60 is a pretty satisfying.
Yeah, so tell me
Very
about
satisfying
that.
thing.
Tell me about breaking the world record and what went into that, and maybe the feelings and the experience.
Well, anytime you're breaking a world record, it's the end result of a long period of focus and training. I had trained, well, I have been training for 15 years. I don't take breaks unless I'm sick or on some, I mean, basically I don't take breaks unless I'm, in swimming what you do is you build up so you have a hard training phase, and then you have a tapering phase where you drop down the workload so that your body rests and actually performs at a higher level because the muscles are less fatigued and they compensate. But the leading up the 6 months before I broke the world record, I switched and started using a trainer for strength training who worked with a number of the current Olympic gold medalists. And I think that little bit of change in my strength program translated into, I give it a lot of credit for how I was able to go from where I was to drop significant time and break the world record.
Yeah, it obviously helped.
Sounds like an excellent strategy to me. If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Huntsman World Senior Games Active Life on Fox News AM 1450. And we're talking with Donald Graham, a swimmer and a world record holder and a photographer.
So, Donald, it makes me wonder. You said that you competed in college and then you started up again in 1998, just doing a little bit of math. You took a break for about 20 years. So
That's right.
I'm really curious about what you did in those 20 years and what got you back into swimming. What was the catalyst that got you back into the sport?
Well, I've always stayed fairly active, even though I didn't swim for 20 years. I've always liked I liked the weight room, and so I would, during those 20 years, I lifted probably 3 times a week. I'm guessing probably 3 times a week. And the catalyst that got me back into it is that I was literally at a pool one day, and they had a masters competition, and it kind of, I just had some curiosity, so I looked up the schedule and picked a competition and trained for a little while. I don't know, maybe 3 weeks or something, and went in and raced. And I swam a lot faster than I had anticipated I would, considering I had been 20 years out of training for swimming.
Yeah.
And so in addition, and then I went back into training. In addition, I used to be a swimming coach, so I have a lot of background in training athletes. And the first career I had when I graduated from college is that I coached at the University of Texas, University of Florida, was the head assistant coach at USC, University of Southern California, and then I also ran a club program where we had, it was a top 16 program, and we had a national high school record holder. So I had, about 10 years of coaching experience coming out of college before I became a photographer. And so I was able to utilize that kind of information in putting together a program for myself. But things have changed a lot. I mean, training has changed dramatically in 20 years.
Well, it really has. And just keeping your feet in the water, so to speak, and literally keeping your feet in the water probably helped keep it in the back of your mind. And when things are in the back of your mind, it's easy to think about how to improve. You're working on these problems in the back of your mind. It sounds like it really paid dividends for you.
Well, it did, and it's also an activity that you have to love the day-to-day process. And I love training sessions in the water, and I love working out in the weight room. I've always enjoyed working in the weight room, and so when you love the process, it's easy to put aside an hour and a half a day and say, you know what, no matter if it's 10 o'clock at night, I'm still going to get to the pool or get to the gym and get my workout in before I go to bed.
Right. It always becomes a priority. Well, now tell us a little bit about your experience with the Huntsman World Senior Games coming here and what you found when I know the first time you came was like in 2004 and then you had a little break, but what was your experience like?
Well, I mean, there's a couple different experiences. There's the one experience is the games themselves, and it's a really great group of people. There's a certain personal and intimate feeling that one has when you compete at the Huntsman Games as opposed to, let's say, the U.S. National Championships. And people are very, very supportive. They give you encouragement. When you get out of the water, people come out of nowhere and say, "Hey, great job!" Shake your hand. That kind of support, which is really nice to have in competition.
Oh yeah.
So the actual Huntsman Games is a fun competition. And then second of all, it's in southern Utah, and I love southern Utah. I think it's one of the most amazing out-of-door experiences in the U.S., and which is why I actually have a cabin on some kind of, I guess you call it wilderness land because you can't get there during the winter except by snowmobile, up near Bryan Head. And so southern Utah has always been a place. I always tell people it's some of the most best undiscovered area in the United States to take in the outdoors.
It really is, and we find that, I don't know if you're aware, but we find that our athletes spend an average of 6.7 days when they come to our event, but our average event is 4-point-something days. So there's a couple of extra days that people are spending here that aren't related to competition, and we're pretty sure that it's because they're experiencing what you're talking about, the wonders of St. George or southern Utah while they're here.
Well, I'm one of those people because I always try to set aside 2, 3, or 4 extra days to just do some great things around. You go out to Zion and hike the Narrows or any. There's a whole bunch of places. Bike through some of the canyons, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, as a photographer, are you? Does it appeal to you from that perspective as well? I mean, I realize you're usually doing portraits, but does the beauty appeal to your photographic instincts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes. You're influenced by color. The colors of the landscape are very different than where I grew up in Seattle, which tends to be greens and grays. And down in the Southwest, you have golds and warm browns, and it's a very spectacular landscape. There are the big skies and wide open feeling that you have is I don't know. I just find it very inspirational for me.
Just while we're on the topic of photography, and this is just an aside, we'll come back to talking about swimming in the games, but I went to your website, and you've photographed a few famous people. Do you want to share,
Yes.
just pat yourself on the back and drop a few names of some of the folks that you photographed?
Well, I've photographed in movie industry people like Sandra Bullock and Matt Damon and Snoop Dogg and Lenny Kravitz and a lot of different well-known people in the entertainment industry. Had the opportunity to work with photograph politicians and vice presidents and some of the people who in science who decoded the human genome. It's an opportunity. I get the opportunity to meet people that do things that change the world, and that's a very exciting thing to be able to spend 6 or 8 hours of one-on-one time with people that either are well-known in the entertainment industry or are doing things in science or diplomacy, etc., that really change the world in which we live. And that, at the end of the day, you go home at the end of the day and go, wow, that was a pretty amazing experience to be able to spend 6 hours with the Secretary of State and ask a lot of questions that I think all of us have when we're sitting at home going, what are they thinking? And you're able to ask those kind of questions, and you have kind of a captive audience, and it's a wonderful experience to be able to have that opportunity. So I consider that to be one of the gifts of the work that I do.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Now, we're starting to wind down. The half hour goes really fast. If you're just joining us, this is the Huntsman World Senior Games Active Life on Fox News AM 1450, and we're talking with Donald Graham. He's a swimmer, a Huntsman World Senior Games athlete, and a photographer. Now, have you ever been to have you been to the opening ceremonies with the games?
I have not been to the opening ceremonies. The way they scheduled swimming, I have not. Usually I come in and I usually stay after the games are over. So I have not been to the opening ceremonies. Yeah,
the opening ceremonies are Tuesday and swimming starts on Wednesday, I believe. So okay. I think that's how it works. But if outside of setting the record that we've already talked about, do you have another memory or something about the games that just sticks out as a real highlight that you'd like to share?
Well, I think one of the things that you find pretty quickly when you participate in the games over multiple years is that you make friends very quickly at each games, and then when you go back, it's very much the same group. I mean, the people keep coming back year after year, and so in the first year you might make one or two friends, and then in the second year you might make another one or two friends. So in the second year you've got 4 friends, and then the next year another 1 or 2, and so you got 6 friends. And so each time you go, you walk in and you feel like you're saying hello to friends that you haven't seen for a while. And each year that goes by, that number increases significantly. So after a few years, it's a very fun experience. And so I think friendships that you make is one of the satisfying things of competing in sport, because you share with each other. You share each other on many different levels. You can share on just a personal level, and then sometimes they're involved in things where I get a call, 6 months down the road, and they'll call me up and say, "Hey, listen, such and such came up. I was thinking maybe you'd be interested in this." And, it's that kind of thing that also is really fun and satisfying.
We have a saying here at the games that people come for the first time for the competition and thereafter for the camaraderie. And I think you just kind of validated that particular feeling. Now, we're getting close to the end of the show. Just quickly, what would you say to somebody out there who's on the fence about getting active, starting to compete, getting back to their sport, something like that? What would you say to them to motivate them? Get your coach's hat on and get them motivated.
It changes your life fundamentally for the better. You are. It takes years off of your life, and it's one of the best uses of your time that I can think of.
Well, that's great advice and sound advice too, Donald. It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure visiting with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well, it's as we've talked about for the last several weeks. It's a time of year where people are signing up to become participants in the Huntsman World Senior Games. Derek,
it is. Every day we get more and more athletes registering, and we're trying to polish up some of our earlier sports that have filled up, and we're working on that diligently and trying to make every athlete happy as we try and partner up as many as we can.
get things going. Well, if you would like to register, you can simply go to www.seniorgames.net and pick one of the available sports. There's about 25 of them still available, so there's plenty to choose from. And also, if you enjoyed this show and you want to share it with a friend, you can go to the same website, www.seniorgames.net, and the shows are available to listen to review. It's kind of fun. You can also find the shows on live, the broadcast live on canyonmedia.net each Thursday. And if you have something you'd like to share with us, if you have something that a comment or a question that you'd like to ask us, you can send an email to activelife@seniorgames.net. So there's a lot of seniorgames.net to remember out there, Derek, but it all comes to us, and that's what it's all about.
It does, and we love it. We love it.
And for our parting quote, just remember that aging is not lost youth, but a new stage of opportunity and strength. And that was a quote by Betty Friedan. Until next week, stay active, everyone.